Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're doing something a little bit different for this special edition.
Yeah, we are.
We're calling this one Crisis in Perception. And usually, when we gather here, we're dissecting a massive stack of academic journals.
Right.
Or maybe a really dense piece of nonfiction. We try to extract the key insights.
Oh, hard data.
Exactly, the hard data. But today, we're actually turning our attention to a novel.
And I can already hear some of you listening right now pausing and thinking, wait, I thought this show was about systems.
Yeah.
I thought we looked at structural analysis. Why are we talking about fiction?
I know.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Sometimes fiction is the only way to actually see the data clearly.
Completely agree.
The book we're using is The Love Songs of W.E.B. Bois by Honorée Fanonne Jeffers. But I really need to be super clear about this right off the bat.
Go for it.
This is not a book review.
No, absolutely not. We are not here to critique the prose style or rate the pacing or, tell you whether the ending was satisfying in a literary sense. We don't do that here.
We are using this text as a diagnostic tool. We're treating the narrative explicitly as a data set of American history.
Because books are entry points. And the mission today is to examine the invisible systems that shape our world.
Yes. We want to move beyond seeing history as a series of events.
Yeah.
The way we were all taught in school.
Dates, battles, elections.
Treaties, it's just a timeline.
Yeah.
But we want to start seeing history as architecture.
Architecture is the perfect word for it. The premise of our discussion today is that identity, who you are, where you belong, what you are worth in society, is not just a personal feeling.
No.
Identity is a system. It is the output of a machine that was designed to categorize, separate, and rank human beings.
And what makes this novel such a perfect case study for this systems-level analysis is that it spans centuries.
It does. It gives us a longitudinal view.
Right. It allows us to see this machine running over a massive timeline. We're going to look at how this racial hierarchy is reproduced generation after generation.
Through 4 specific pillars.
Land, law, kinship, and archives.
And we are doing this because of that phrase he used in the intro, the crisis in perception.
Right.
The crisis is that we tend to look at the surface of things. We see individual attitudes.
We see specific tragedies.
A bad apple, right. But we miss the structural design that makes those tragedies completely inevitable. We miss the blueprint.
So let's set the stage for you. We are looking at the American South, specifically Georgia, through the lens of one very complicated, very extended family.
We are analyzing the design of the social order. And the core argument we want to extract from this source material is that history isn't a past event.
It's active.
It is an active, persistent institutional structure. It is not a ghost haunting a house. It is the foundation of the house we are currently walking around in.
I really love that distinction because it shifts the responsibility, doesn't it, from just dealing with the past to actively dealing with the present structure.
Exactly.
So to keep us on track, because this is a massive topic, we have broken this deep dive down into phases.
First up is design.
Right, how this machine was built. Then we will look at incentives.
Why people keep the machine running.
Then outcomes, which is the damage it does. And finally, persistence.
Why we can't just move on. It's a very logical flow. From the blueprint right down to the lived reality.
Okay, let's unpack the design phase, the architecture of dispossession. And to do that, we have to start with the land itself.
Always the land. You cannot understand the American system without understanding the relationship to the soil.
So in the source text, before it was a plantation, before it was a state called Georgia, before it was even a concept on a map.
It had a name.
Right. This land had a name. It was called the place in the middle of the tall trees.
That name is so incredibly descriptive.
It locates you physically.
It's relational. It creates a sense of being within the environment rather than standing over it, commanding it.
But the source material is very explicit about what it calls the original transgression.
And this is key. I think most people, if you ask them about the original sin of the American South, they would immediately say slavery.
Right, 1619, the arrival of the first enslaved Africans.
But the text corrects that timeline. It says the original transgression wasn't slavery. It was greed and intrusion.
Intrusion.
Yes. The displacement of the indigenous people, specifically the Creek or Muskogee people.
Because before you could have a plantation economy, you had to empty the land to put the plantation on it.
Precisely. There is this chilling line in the book about the sin of intrusion. It compares it to a neighbor coming to your door, finding you home, killing you, and then pretending the house was empty all along.
That pretending it was empty is the key legal mechanism here. This is where we really get into the law pillar of our system.
We see this progression of treaties mentioned in the text. The Treaty of New York in 1790, the Treaty of Fort Wilkinson in 1802.
Now, if you are the Creek people living there, these treaties are existential threats.
These are apocalypse moments for their society.
But to the settlers, to the government,
It's just paperwork.
it's the paperwork of erasure.
That is exactly what it is. These treaties were a technology. They transformed the land from a living environment, a place of sacred meaning, hunting, community, into property.
They turned the place in the middle of the tall trees into wood place.
At plantation.
One is a home, and the other is just a capital asset.
And that transformation from home to asset is the bedrock of the entire economic system that follows. You can't have racial capitalism without first turning the earth into a commodity.
But alongside the renaming of the land, you have the renaming of the people.
Yes.
This part fascinated me because it shows how race was actually constructed as a system. There was this character, an ancestor, who comes from the Gold Coast of Africa.
And the white traders call him Coromantee.
Right. So break that down for us. Why is that specific label a perfect example of system design?
Because Coromantee wasn't a real tribe or an ethnic group in the way the people themselves understood it.
You wouldn't go to the Gold Coast and find people introducing themselves as Coromantee.
No, never. It was a label invented entirely by British slave traders. It was used to categorize people from a specific region, like the Akan, Asante, or Fente people.
So it was essentially a brand.
It was a SKU number. It was a commercial category used to predict behavior. The traders considered Coromantee slaves to be strong but rebellious.
Wow.
So it erased his specific history, his specific tribal affiliation, and replaced it with a category of labor.
The system strips his identity and gives him a product code.
Exactly.
But, and here's where the systems really clash in the narrative. When he escapes and is taken in by the Creek village, the indigenous system treats him completely differently.
They do not call him a slave.
No. They adopt him. He becomes Coromantee Panther.
That distinction is huge. In the colonial system, he is property, full stop. In the indigenous system, he is kin. He joins the Panther clan.
Which really highlights that the racial hierarchy wasn't just some inevitable force of nature. It was designed.
It was a choice. The Creek system had a mechanism for integration, which was adoption. If you can perform the duties of a kinsperson, you are kin.
While the colonial system only had a mechanism for exclusion and extraction. Enslavement.
It really shows that these were two completely opposing worldviews colliding on the same soil.
But the tragedy in the book is that the colonial virus is contagious. We see this infection spread to the indigenous characters too.
Which brings us to the character of Miko.
Miko is a Creek man living right in this transition period, and we see his value system shift in real time.
He is such a tragic figure because Miko tries to survive by adopting the tools of the oppressor.
He sees the power the white settlers have.
And he thinks the secret to that power is ownership. He inherits this desperate desire for property from his white father.
The text describes him walking the land, literally whispering to himself, mine, mine.
Which his mother, Nyla, finds completely alien. She looks at him like he is physically sick. She wants nothing to do with white men's possessions.
But Miko thinks, if I own this, if I have the paper, I am safe. The system will protect me.
That is the design flaw he falls for. The shift from using the land to owning the land creates the very mechanism for his own exclusion.
He thinks he's securing a legacy for his family. He marries his daughter, Lady, to a white man, Samuel Pinchard.
Thinking, okay, now the land stays in the family. We are merging our interests with the power structure.
But the system simply does not work that way.
No, the system is designed to consume him. Samuel Pinchard takes the land, takes the power, and Miko is pushed to the very margins of his own home.
It's the trap of institutional assimilation.
Mika thought the law would protect him if he just followed the rules of property. But the law was designed from the ground up to strip him of property.
The law isn't some neutral arbiter.
Right. It's a tool of the hierarchy. By validating the concept of exclusive ownership, Miko inadvertently validated the weapon that would be used to displace his own people.
That is such a hard lesson. It's the classic master's tools problem.
Yeah.
You cannot dismantle the house using the tools that built it.
You really can't.
Which leads us directly into phase 2, incentives. Because if we're looking at this as a machine, we have to ask why this hierarchy stabilizes.
Why do people support it?
Especially when in some cases it actively hurts them. I mean, it is easy to see why Samuel Pinchard supports the system. He gets incredibly rich.
But what about the poor whites?
Exactly. What is their incentive?
This is where we have to look at the concept of the wages of whiteness.
This is a concept from W.E.B. Du Bois himself, right?
But
The real historical figure, not just the character in the book.
yes, and we see it perfectly illustrated in the Franklin family.
These are what the text calls the worthy poor. They came over on Oglethorpe's ship. They are not rich plantation owners.
Not at all. They are scratching out a living in the dirt. Jeremiah Franklin is a sharecropper.
So economically, if you look at his balance sheet, he has way more in common with the black enslaved people or the Creek farmers than he does with Samuel Pinchard.
They are all being exploited by the landowning class. But Jeremiah harbors this vicious, consuming hatred for the Creek and black people.
He hunts them. He literally hunts human beings.
And he is completely obsessed with destroying the indigenous mound on the property.
So why? What does he actually gain from that?
He gains status. Because he has absolutely zero economic capital, his whiteness is the only capital he has.
The psychological wage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The system offers him a psychological wage. He might be poor, he might be hungry, he might be illiterate, but the system constantly whispers to him, at least you aren't them.
So destroying the mound is an act of claiming dominance.
It is an act of erasure. It's him saying, my history is the only history that gets to exist here. If he admits that the Creek people built something magnificent, he loses.
Or if he admits that the black people are his equals, he loses his only spot on the ladder.
The system incentivizes his hatred because his hatred stabilizes the system. It keeps him from aligning with the other poor people against the rich.
That is the ultimate divide and conquer strategy.
It is institutional design at its finest.
And then you have his sister, Grace Franklin. Her story maps a different kind of incentive, the incentive to marry up.
Grace represents the gendered aspect of this incentive structure. She marries into the Pinchard family.
She goes from the dirt cabin to the big house. It sounds like a Cinderella story.
But a very grim one, because there is a massive cost to that ascent.
She knows about the violence happening in that house, or she willfully ignores it.
She knows about Samuel's perversions, she knows about the cruelty, but the system incentivizes her silence.
It essentially buys her complicity.
Becoming a Pinchard washes away the stigma of being a Franklin. It's a trade. You give up your morality for your social status.
If she speaks up, she goes right back to the dirt.
So she becomes the gatekeeper of the Pinchard reputation. She protects the institution.
And at the very top of this pyramid of incentives is Samuel Pinchard himself, the master.
We really need to treat Samuel not just as a villain, though the source material certainly paints him as a complete monster, but as an institution.
He represents the big house.
Right. And the source material draws this incredibly sharp geographical line on the plantation. You have the big house, and you have the left cabin.
Talk to us about that geography.
That physical geography is the bifurcation of history. Think of the big house as the front stage.
It represents the public record.
It's the law. It's the legitimate marriage. It's the reputable lineage, the oil portraits on the wall, the family Bibles with the tree written in the front.
It is what society agrees to call history.
And the left cabin,
that is the backstage.
That is the shadow archive. That is where the rape happens. That is where the unrecorded births happen. That is where the young friends are hidden.
The children kept for sexual use.
Yes.
It's terrifying because Samuel's power depends entirely on maintaining that wall between the two.
The big house cannot exist without the extraction from the left cabin. That is where the labor comes from. That is where the pleasure is extracted.
But it also absolutely cannot acknowledge that the left cabin exists.
Precisely. And the entire community, the church, the law, the neighbors, they are all incentivized to look only at the big house and ignore the left cabin.
That is the crisis in perception in its early stages, right there.
Seeing the facade and calling it the whole structure, because if you acknowledge the left cabin, the entire legitimacy of the big house collapses.
Which leads us perfectly to phase 3, interconnection. Because you really can't talk about this separation without talking about race, gender, and the archive itself.
And specifically, how the system treats the bodies of black women.
This brings us to probably the most difficult part of the design. Gendered violence as an institutional pillar.
We have to talk about the young friends, children like Rabbit and Lena.
The source material is brutal here. It describes how Samuel Pinchard keeps them in the left cabin.
And we must understand this not as incidental cruelty. This is not just one bad man being a pervert. This is structural design.
The text mentions fancy girls' markets.
This was an economic loop. The bodies of black women and girls were directly converted into currency.
We always hear about the field labor in the public narrative,
Cotton, tobacco, sugar. That is the production side.
but the reproduction side.
The sexual extraction, the breeding of new enslaved people, the sale of fancy girls, that was just as central to the economy. It was an industry.
It commodified human intimacy and vulnerability.
But even inside that horror, the text gives us this incredible moment of connection. The doll scene.
Yes, that detail is so profound. Rabbit meets Lena, who is being kept in the cabin.
Lena is lonely, she is terrified, and Rabbit, who is also just a child, offers her food.
And Lena offers her a doll. And she says, "My name be Lena. That's what my mama named me."
That assertion of identity right there. That's what my mama named me. Inside a system that is entirely designed to erase their names.
It's a massive act of resistance.
It highlights the resilience occurring inside the cage. The system tries to turn her into a young friend, a nameless object. But she insists on being Lena, daughter of her mother.
But then we see how history records, or utterly fails to record, that life. This is the archive section of our deep dive.
We jump forward to the protagonist, Ailey. She is a historian in the modern day.
She is looking through the Old South collections.
This is brilliant meta-commentary on how history is written. Ailey finds a log entry in Samuel's journal.
And it just says, 11 July 1859, Rabbit and Lena dead.
That is it.
2 human lives, a sister, a friend, the trauma, the fire, the screams, all of it is reduced to a ledger entry.
A property loss. The archive privileges the document. It privileges Samuel's journal because he had the power to write and the legal standing to exist.
And the experience of Rabbit and Lena is erased because they were not considered historical agents.
Their lives were only relevant insofar as they impacted Samuel's net worth.
And Ailey runs into this exact same wall in the modern day.
She is in grad school, and her professor, Dr. Whitcomb, challenges her.
When she tries to talk about the emotional reality of the text, he actually asks her, "Have you ever been a slave?"
It is the academic version of the exact same hierarchy. He demands empirical proof.
But the system was designed to prevent the oppressed from creating empirical proof.
Enslaved people were legally forbidden from learning to write. Their oral histories were systematically ignored.
So when a modern historian like Whitcomb demands written proof, he is just reinforcing the silence that the slave owner created.
Exactly. So the academic system reproduces the plantation hierarchy.
It basically says, if it wasn't written down by the white man in the big house, it didn't happen.
It is epistemological violence. It dictates who gets to be history and who is relegated to just being folklore. It is a way of gatekeeping reality.
That is a heavy realization, which leads us to phase 4, outcomes.
What are the echoes of this system?
Right. How does it shape the minds of the people living in it today?
Well, we have to talk about W.E.B. Du Bois here.
He is not just in the title of the book. He is a major symbol within the narrative.
Uncle Root, who is this amazing elder character, sort of the griot of the family, he tells stories about actually meeting Du Bois.
Seeing him speak French with Jessie Fossé.
Du Bois gives us the theory of double consciousness. And this is essential for understanding the psychological outcome of the system we have just described.
Explain double consciousness for us in this context.
It's the sense of always looking at oneself through the eyes of others.
Right?
Of measuring your soul by the tape of a world that looks on in amused contempt and pity.
Two-ness. An American, a Negro. 2 warring ideals in one dark body.
We see this played out constantly in Ailey. She is navigating these very white academic spaces.
She is at the university, dealing with that diversity mail-out.
Oh, the mail-out. It shows a diversity on campus that doesn't actually exist in reality.
And she has to perform her identity to be credible to Dr. Whitcomb.
While knowing all along that her true history is in the oral stories that Uncle Root tells.
She is living in the gap between how the institution sees her and who she actually is.
It is exhausting. The source text shows how she has to be twice as good just to get half the credit.
But the book also critiques Du Bois, right? It doesn't just put him on a flawless pedestal.
It does critique him. And this is important for true systems analysis. Even the heroes are shaped by this system.
The text notes that Du Bois was a Lothario.
He arguably mistreated women. He was a champion of the race, yes, but he still inhabited and benefited from the patriarchal structure of his time.
It complicates the narrative. It shows that you can fight one system, like racism, while simultaneously benefiting from another, like patriarchy.
Which brings us back to interconnection. You cannot pull these threads apart.
And the outcome of all this pressure, the racism, the sexism, the erasure, is generational trauma.
It's not just a buzzword here. It is a haunting. It is patterned harm.
We see this so clearly with Lydia, Ailey's sister, her addiction, the absolute tragedy of the pink dress.
Lydia's story is the modern echo of Lena's story.
The vulnerability of Black women is a repeated outcome.
From the cabin to the modern city, the system fundamentally denies them protection. Lydia falls into addiction, and the system treats her as an individual failure,
Rather than a victim of generational dislocation.
and the silence plays a huge part in this. The family hides things.
They don't talk about the abuse.
They don't talk about the addiction until it is far too late.
That is the feedback loop we see over and over.
Yeah.
Silence leads to the protection of power.
Or sometimes the protection of dignity. They're trying to keep the family business private.
But that silence allows the harm to be repeated.
If you don't diagnose the wound, you cannot heal it.
And Ailey's reaction to all this trauma is so incredibly relatable. She makes to-do lists.
Yes, the to-do list. It is her attempt to out-organize grief.
It is a very American response, isn't it?
Very much so. The system demands productivity even in the face of total devastation. She tries to use work, achievement, and academic success to hold back the tide of history.
If I just check enough boxes, maybe I will be safe.
But the list never ends.
Because the problem isn't a lack of productivity.
The problem is the architecture of the world she lives in.
So we have seen the design, the incentives, the outcomes. Now we arrive at phase 5. Persistence.
Why hasn't this system collapsed? Why are we still dealing with this architecture today?
To understand that, we have to look at the myth of the last descendant. We have to look at Cordelia Pinchard Rice.
She is the descendant of Samuel Pinchard. She still lives in the town.
She is this elderly white lady who firmly believes she is the last of the line.
She believes she is the last Pinchard because she had no white children.
But the reality is the town is full of Pinchards.
Everywhere. Ailey is a Pinchard. The Freemans are Pinchards. Almost all the Black families in the area carry Pinchard blood because of Samuel's systematic abuse in the left cabin.
But Cordelia doesn't see them.
She is structurally blind. This is what we call strategic forgetting.
The white family preserves its status by literally editing the family tree.
If she acknowledges the Black descendants, she has to acknowledge the left cabin.
She has to acknowledge the rape.
She has to acknowledge that her purity and her noble lineage is a complete lie.
So she just erases them from her mind.
And the system allows her to do it. The law allows her to. The archive allows her to.
She can die peacefully, thinking she is the end of a noble line, rather than the matriarch of a sprawling, multiracial family born of violence.
And the craziest part of all this? The land.
Oh, the land transfer is wild. She thinks she sold the ancestral land to some anonymous strangers.
But Uncle Root, her Black cousin, is the one who bought it.
It is the ultimate irony. The Black family actually owns the ancestral land.
The legal transfer happened. The deed was signed. But the cultural transfer never happened.
Cordelia doesn't know. The white side of the town largely doesn't know.
Segregation blocked the flow of that knowledge completely.
So the system persists because the truth is compartmentalized. The Black family knows the truth, but the white family is allowed to live comfortably in the myth.
And because the histories are intertwined in ways the system desperately tries to deny, we have to look at the genealogy again.
It's not just a binary of black and white. It's Creek and African and Scottish.
The genealogy connects Coromantee Panther to Woman of the Wind to the modern Black descendants.
The system tried its hardest to separate Indian via removal, sending them to Oklahoma.
And Negro via slavery.
Yeah.
It tried to create two entirely separate buckets to manage these populations.
But the bloodlines merged anyway.
The history persists in the DNA and in the oral stories. Uncle Root's love songs. It persists even when the law tried to sever it.
Andrew Jackson's removal acts couldn't stop the blood from mixing.
No. And that is really where the hope lies in this text, intertwined with all the tragedy. The love songs are the oral histories that survived the fires.
They are the alternate archive.
They are the record of the people who were not allowed to write in journals.
So we have reached the end of our diagnostic here. We've mapped the system. And I want to ask the central question of this episode explicitly.
Let's hear it.
Based on this massive case study we just went through, what is the crisis in perception here?
The crisis in perception is that we view slavery and displacement as events that started and stopped.
Right. We think slavery ended in 1865, or the Trail of Tears happened in the 1830s.
We see them as closed chapters in a textbook.
Like they were bad storms that passed over us, and now the sun is out and the ground is dry.
Exactly. And we view racism as an individual attitude, like Jeremiah Franklin hating people. We think if we just change hearts and minds, if we just teach people to be nicer, we fix the problem.
But the diagnostic shows something else entirely.
It shows that the Pinchard lineage isn't just a family, it is a machine. The land theft, the treaties, the marriage laws, the archival erasure, the gendered violence.
They are one single mechanism.
You cannot understand Jeremiah's hatred without understanding the land treaty. You cannot understand Ailey's anxiety without understanding the archive.
The crisis is that we look at the big house, the official history, the statues, the curriculum, and we actually think it's the whole story.
While entirely missing the left cabin, which was actually the engine that powered the whole thing, the left cabin isn't a sidebar, it is the foundation.
And until we perceive the left cabin as the center of the story, we are hallucinating.
We are living in a fantasy world, just like Cordelia Pinchard Rice.
And what is the resolution to that crisis?
To see the architecture, to value the oral history, the love songs, as much as the written journal.
To understand that the past is an active, living structure that we are still navigating today.
We have to learn to read the invisible ink. If we don't, we will just keep running into the same walls.
That is a lot to think about. It definitely changes how you look at a map or a deed or a family tree.
It certainly does. Once you see the machine, you really can't unsee it.
Crisis in Perception examines how systems shape belief and how better tools help us see clearly.
This project is free and publicly accessible. If you'd like to support the time, tools, and research behind Crisis in Perception, you can become a supporter on Patreon.
For a shorter visual overview of this topic, see the mini explainer linked in the description.
If you enjoy this kind of systems-level analysis, please like, subscribe, and comment with books or topics you'd like us to explore next.